one of the things we learn every week, I think, on Innovate 2016 is that society is changing dramatically and government is often struggling to keep up. One guy, though, who has some really interesting ideas about the way in which government can reinvent itself in a very different kind of world is Anand Shah. Anand is a partner at Accenture. He works very closely with the World Economic Forum. And I think, without wishing to be too obsequious, Anand, you're one of the world's leading thinkers about the new role of government in today's networked age. So welcome to Innovate 2016.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Having given you such a nice introduction, Anand, we're expecting some real nuggets of wisdom. What's going on? How can government, in your words, unlock value in society, in our new world?
So maybe just a brief introduction of the work and where you're even calling me an expert. We have to qualify that somewhat because actually digital technology is relatively new still. So we've been looking at this now for just over a year in partnership with the World Economic Forum. It's probably one of the largest studies of its kind. We're trying to understand how digital technologies are impacting various industries and how those industries can then unlock value for society.
And then, are there experts? You're the guy from Accenture. Can there be experts in this new world, or are we all amateurs?
I don't know. I think there's certainly those who are looking at it much more often than other people, and there's the pace of learning which is difficult to get up. So it's one of like those 10,000 hour rules. So the more time you spend with it, the more similarities you see, the more information you get, the better you understand what's going on. So I think from that perspective, when you start looking at various plays by industry, whether that's centralized, conventional energy, and whether that could be decentralized, renewable energy, you see that as a massive opportunity for society.
So government, what does government need to do? What is the new challenge for government in the 21st century in contrast with the 20th century?
Well, I think they've got to be able to learn and work with technology and work with industry partners and ecosystems much quicker, much faster, much more adaptable. I think what you're seeing is 7-year cycles with regulation where you need much more faster turnaround times in terms of how they're going to be able to regulate and also support innovation, because the innovation is essentially which is creating the growth. So that's why you see, for example, Europe having relatively few large global mega-scale platforms versus, say, the US or China, which have many. And so from that perspective, regulation, if it unlocks entrepreneurialism, innovation, reduces barriers to trade, that's only going to help governments.
And then you've talked about government unlocking value. What does that mean?
So actually we use the term trapped value, and we think that that sort of represents the differential between the societal value levers, which could be things like numbers of lives saved, the carbon emissions reduced, it could be customer or consumer savings, productivity gains, all of these things that come from technologies. Let's say when you buy something online in e-commerce, you're saving time going to shop for that in a retail store. And at the same time as you're reducing emissions, not going in a single car back and forth, but rather crowdsourcing that into a lorry that's dropping off parcels. And the differential there between the societal value and the industry value, which could be the improved margins or the operating economic value added for a industry or for a company, the difference between those two things is what we're calling trapped value. There are economic incentives for a company to only go after as much of that value that it can achieve for that given initiative.
So untrapping value, is that a regulatory thing, or is that really government becoming more innovative?
I think it's probably both. I think it requires the government to be innovative, to work with new technologies, to unlock some of the shackles of bureaucracy or paperwork that go with regulating or creating policies. But it also then requires them to work very collaboratively with industry partners.
So this is all about collaboration. I know you really focus on the idea of bringing partners together. It's not about silos anymore, it's about breaking those silos down.
Yeah, that's right. And so if you take an example of, say, drones, for one example. So drones are now on a 7th or 8th technology evolution. They've been around for some time. They work very well. They're very lightweight. They cost they're very cheap, actually. But we haven't seen them come to mass adoption for, say, last mile deliveries. And part of the reason for that is because of regulation. So governments can unlock that, assuming that drones are actually good. And we know they actually are good because they reduce the cost of delivery by 25%. They actually reduce the carbon emissions from having a truck to a drone by 90%. So actually, if you gain those sort of benefits for society, government, regulators could actually unlock that. What they're challenged on today is safety, security, and privacy from drones. And so what you kind of need is a shared language, like a Google Translate that sits in between industry and the governments and society, talking about those drivers, what are the baselines today, where could they be in the future, and how do you overcome those quickly to unlock the value.
And then what do you make of the debate, the presidential 2016 debate about unlocking value? There seems to be a conversation about whether or not we need walls. What is the role of walls in unlocking value?
I suspect it's probably got a lot to do with data privacy, and the data privacy is a really difficult topic overall because we just don't know quite yet whether or not you want to have more data brokers, whether or not individuals want to have the right to be forgotten, whether or not creating or passing your information through to a company in Europe or the US or in China is safe, and where will that be used further on. As a consumer, Google use us as a product. They use our data, what we search for, as a mechanism to target advertising. And that's their business model. You're signing up for that for free services. I think the policy debate may be around whether that's still the right thing to do going forward, and how that data then moves across boundaries, and who keeps it, and where do they keep it, and how do they use it.
And then finally, what's the role of Silicon Valley in all this? You know, Silicon Valley is often at the end of the process when it comes to government and politics. How can Silicon Valley help with this process? How can they work with government to unlock value?
I think they're doing actually quite a lot of it. So I'm no expert on what's going on with Silicon Valley and DC, but I do know there's quite a lot of the current US deputy CTOs who have actually come from Silicon Valley. Many of them actually sit over here, so actually thinking about government being in DC is not actually true anymore. A lot of them are over here already. So I think it's about collaboration between the government and with Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. That's already happening. We know that these conversations are happening, and the passing back and forth of new ideas and sharing of understanding of what are the big challenges, whether that's national security or whether that's the safety or whether that's the privacy laws. Those things are actually happening right now, and so I think we're getting benefits from it, from actually having cross-pollination of some of the leadership team from, say, Silicon Valley going into DC in some of these roles.
But your bottom line is that cross-pollination is more about the politics than the technology.
Yeah, I think that might well be true, yeah.